and welcome to Catalan News. The Belgian justice has inquired about the conditions that Catalan President Carles Puigdemont and his ministers would face if they were sent to jail in Spain. The Catalan leaders will be interviewed by a judge tomorrow before a decision is made regarding their extradition. What could influence the outcome? We asked an expert on criminal law cooperation in Brussels. This on a coincidental day. Pro-independence civil society leaders Jordi Sánchez and Jordi Cuixart were sent to prison a month ago. Here at Catalan News, we'll get you all the details on this process, as well as the latest on the upcoming December 21st election in Catalonia. Let's start. Carles Puigdemont says that if pro-independence parties win a majority of seats in the Catalan parliament again, he will ask Spanish President Mariano Rajoy, as well as EU leaders, to accept these results and to start a new era of dialogue. He stressed that there is only one legitimate government in Catalonia, referring to himself and his deposed ministers, and he said that he will remain in office following the election. But it is yet to be seen whether the Belgian justice accepts the extradition order from Spain.
Deposed Catalan President Carles Puigdemont has no doubts. There is just one legitimate government in Catalonia, and if pro-independence parties regain control of the Catalan parliament in the upcoming election, he has said that they will recognise him as president. And in that case, he will not give up on independence. Rather, he will demand the Spanish president and EU leaders recognise the results.
And if in the next elections we will win, that I propose to the Mr. Rajoy, Mr. Juncker, Mr. Tajani, to accept and to start a new era of dialogue and negotiation about this reality.
Puigdemont's words shed some light on one of the possible scenarios should pro-independence parties win again. Rather than appointing a new cabinet, they could instead defy Madrid and recognise the deposed government. Yet it remains to be seen how this recognition will come about, and whether some pro-independence politician who has remained free from persecution by Spanish justice is appointed as a figurehead. That could be the case of Marta Rovira, Secretary-General of left-wing ERC, the party of jailed Vice President Oriol Junqueras and favourite in the polls. Today, Rovira visited Junqueras in prison and said that she is willing to do whatever is needed. Also today, Puigdemont's Together for Catalonia ticket gained a major figure on its candidacy list. Jordi Sánchez, a civil society leader who was sent to prison a month ago accused of sedition. The leader of the People's Party in Catalonia, though, played down the political impact of the move.
A mí que este señor vaya de número 2 por Cataluña me preocupa como si va de 25. Me es indiferente y a quien le tiene que preocupar es a ese partido, ¿no? Al PDeCAT.
Sánchez will be second on the list after Puigdemont. Following today's announcement, Sánchez resigned as president of the Catalan National Assembly.
A month ago today, the leaders of the two main pro-independence civil organizations entered prison, whilst under investigation for sedition. Held without bail, Jordi Sánchez and Jordi Cuixart remain behind bars in Madrid awaiting trial. Indeed, Spanish prisons have come under intense scrutiny recently as the Belgian judiciary asked Spain to release information concerning its penitentiary system. Meanwhile, international institutions have also denounced the use of degrading practices found within it.
On October 16th, the two leaders of the two main pro-independence civic organisations, Jordi Sánchez and Jordi Cuixart of Catalan National Assembly and Òmnium Cultural respectively, arrived at the Soto de Real prison in Madrid. Held without bail, they are under investigation for sedition after being accused of seditiously mobilising people on September 20th and 21st and asking citizens to protest in front of polling stations on October 1st. 1 month later, the two pro-independence leaders are still awaiting trial. From prison, Cuixart denounced in a letter the unfair and unfounded imprisonment, saying that Catalan institutions are under an unprecedented attack. The imprisonment of Cuixart and Sánchez has not been the only one. Indeed, it was just the beginning of a long process of hearings, with even some members of the Catalan government ending up behind bars, having been dismissed by the Spanish government after the enforcement of Article 155 of the Spanish Constitution. After Cuixart and Sánchez, the next Catalan leaders to be jailed were the Catalan Vice President and 7 ministers. The other members of the Catalan government currently in Belgium, including Carles Puigdemont, aren't out of the woods yet. Indeed, Spanish prisons have come under intense scrutiny as the Belgian judiciary asked Spain for information related to the Spanish penitentiary system before the hearing of Puigdemont and his ministers in Brussels takes place. The The Belgian judiciary also requested information on the Spanish judicial proceedings and even wants to know what kind of prison Puigdemont and his ministers will be sent to. Today, the Council of Europe spoke out and urged Spain to end abusive and degrading practices within its prison system. After visiting some Spanish prisons, the Committee for the Prevention of Torture of the Council of Europe stated that immobilizing prisoners is used as a punitive measure in Spanish prisons, sometimes lasting days. In addition, the committee stated that cells have little ventilation and little light.
Whether Puigdemont is sent to prison or not will largely depend on whether the Belgian justice accepts the extradition order from Spain. Tomorrow, the deposed Catalan president and his ministers will once again appear before a judge in Brussels, who will then have to make a decision on the matter. In order to understand what will influence this choice, we speak with Anne Weyenberg, president of the Institute of European Studies of the Université Libre de Bruxelles. She is an expert on judicial cooperation in criminal law cases. Ms. Weyenberg, thanks for being with us.
Hello.
So what will the judge take into account when making a decision on whether or not to accept the European arrest warrant?
So the basic principle of the mutual recognition principle and of the European arrest warrant mechanism is the principle of mutual trust. So the idea is that all member states of the EU share common values, common standards, are all submitted to the jurisdiction of the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, also submit to the Court of Justice of the EU, and so, should trust each other. So this is really the fundamental principle which should be taken into consideration by the executing judicial authorities.
And what about the principles that could indeed help Puigdemont and his ministers? Is there any ground for rejecting the extradition order?
Two grounds for refusal, could be used. At least this is, I would say, theoretical possibility. So on the one hand, you have this ground for refusal based on a serious risk of infringement of human rights. And on the other hand, you have this ground for refusal based on the double criminality requirements.
So could you elaborate on the human rights infringement argument?
So the first ground for refusal I mentioned, the one based on human rights infringement, could be used, but Mr. Puigdemont and his defense lawyer should then show very concretely that there are such risk of infringement for him if he was surrendered back to Spain. And so, of course, it does not suffice to say, I think there would be a risk for me if I'm taken back in Spain. No, the demonstration must be much more serious than that. And so objective elements should be mentioned and shown by Mr. Puigdemont and his defense lawyer.
What does the double criminality requirement consist of?
The second ground for refusal I mentioned is the ground for refusal based on double criminality requirements. Because, the EAW mechanism, so the European arrest warrant mechanism, suppressed in principle this double criminality requirement for 32 offenses. But sedition and rebellion, which are two of the offenses for which Mr. Puigdemont is being prosecuted in Spain, are not mentioned on that list. So this means that the Belgian executing judge should verify, should check whether these the facts for which Mr. Puigdemont is prosecuted in Belgium are also criminalized, so constitute also in Belgian law criminal offenses. And here there could be a problem, because in our Belgian criminal code we have these offenses of sedition and rebellion, but the definitions are different in Belgian law if you compare them with Spanish law.
Thank you for being with us, Ms. Weinberg.
Thank you. Bye.
And let's move back to Barcelona, because the Tweety Bird ship, sent to house Spanish police ahead of the October 1st referendum, finally left the city port. There have been very few reasons to smile during the political crisis of the past few weeks. An unlikely one, though, came as a ship decorated with children's cartoon characters. On Thursday morning, the Mobilidad, the ferry's actual name, left the port of Barcelona and is on its way back to Italy. Almost an hour later, another ship arrived in Barcelona and docked in the space that the Mobilidad had left. Since the Mobilidad arrived in Barcelona on September 20th, the ship had been in the center of controversy. The figure of Tweety Bird on its side then became a symbol of defiance in pro-independence demonstrations. Police unions also criticized the use of ferries to house police officers, reporting on the living conditions inside the Mobilidad in particular. And let's stay in Barcelona, because the City Council has approved a proposal that could effectively prevent far-right protests and violence from taking place in the city. The measures would allow the council to deny permits to far-right protests so that they couldn't happen, and it would also be an attempt to counter a recent rise in violence during and after pro-Spain rallies. Far-left pro-independence CUP party, who introduced the proposal, is calling on the council to actively condemn recent far-right hostilities. Meanwhile, Unionist Ciudadans' Carina Mejías accused pro-independence councillors of lying and said this initiative criminalizes those who think differently. Events in October have had a negative effect on hotel reservations and street sales in Barcelona, according to industry insiders. One of Barcelona's main shopping streets, Passeig de Gràcia, witnessed a 20 to 30% drop in sales in the month of October. Meanwhile, the hotel industry reported a decrease in turnout of nearly 15%. Catalan ports, however, are riding the waves of the current political storm. Container traffic in the port of Barcelona increased by 31% this month. Still in Barcelona, a curious new exhibit opens its doors tomorrow, and it revolves around antique books. But it also takes visitors back to a time when these illustrated manuscripts, some dating back to the Middle Ages, were how information was passed on. You can even learn about how they were made.
Book lovers, this one is for you. A new exhibit opens in Barcelona tomorrow, dedicated only to the books, specifically to the old, the beautiful, the rare, and the classic. The pleasure of looking, treasures from the University of Barcelona Library Fund, will be put on by the University of Barcelona and the Catalonia History Museum. Hosted at the museum itself, it invites museum goers to travel back in time, to an era when knowledge was shared only in book form. But the exhibit isn't just for bibliophiles. It's a window into a way of living the past, and can serve as a reminder to slow down and rest from today's constant rush of information.
Ara tenim moltes altres maneres de transmetre el coneixement, però durant tots aquests segles va ser el llibre, bàsicament. I estem en un món de tanta rapidesa i de tanta virtualitat que perdem, ens estem perdent tota aquesta manera de fer i de tant els coneixements que es transmetien com la manera com els transmetien.
The oldest book in the collection is a manuscript from 1343, the Book of Deeds, a medieval autobiography chronicling the reign of King James I of Aragon. Other unique works include scientific Catalan miscellany. Along with admiring the beautiful works, visitors will also learn about the curious aspects of the volumes, such as the illustrations and previous owners. One can even learn about the writing and the binding of the works.
That's all for our show today. But before we go, we leave you with some images of an unlikely protest in Catalonia. Even though the country is used to very imaginative demonstrations, this one from ecologists in Osona who protest against the pollution caused by intensive pig farming may surprise you. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.